You're listening to 3-Minute Marketing, where we interview the world's top growth marketing leaders and distill their knowledge into actionable, bite-sized insights. Now here's your host, Chris Mechanic.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode. We've got a really interesting guest on, Doug Zarkin. Doug has kind of a storied career. It started in 2002. He went on board with Avon, which he then transitioned kind of into, or went into then building out Victoria's Secret in the early days before they were like a massive juggernaut, and is now, since 2012, at Luxottica Retail, which owns Pearle Vision, which is a franchisor with over 550 locations. So Doug oversees this. And he's had a string of victories that weren't just like quick pops, but emerging or sustained growth. Welcome to the show, Doug. Nice to have you.
How you doing? Thanks for having me.
Doing well. I have a question for you, which is basically like, what's your secret? How are you growing these brands in a sustainable and ongoing way?
So if there was only a secret, I probably could sell it. It really comes down to, I think, a mixture of both arrogance and humility. To be a marketer, you by nature have to have a degree of arrogance, because marketing at its core is really about tapping into the mindset of a consumer, understanding what they want and what they need, and then putting out messaging that motivates them to take the action that you want when you want them to take it. Unbelievably bold challenge. The humility comes from recognizing that in order to lead, you must first listen, especially in a product or a service that you can't relate to. You referenced some of my early client side roles at Avon and Victoria's Secret. Anything that we were developing there really was about active listening in order to figure out where we were going to go. The second facet beyond what we just talked about is the notion of thinking human. Marketing is about identifying a target, but that target isn't a bunch of data points on an Excel chart. It's really about understanding the people behind the target. And then the third thing is really just an incredible ability to be as consistently consistent as possible. To think in 1 year or even in 2 years that you're going to radically change the trajectory of a brand is pretty challenging, especially in this marketplace with so many choices and options. So best laid plans take time, and so being able to be consistently consistent and identifying the musts and the needs, and then the coulds and the shoulds, and then the wants, and ensuring that you're doing the best possible job you can on the musts and the needs.
Interesting. Expand on that concept. We've got about 1 minute left. What do you mean musts and needs?
It really just comes down to understanding that fear of missing out is not a marketing strategy. There's a lot of things you could do. There's even more things that you want to do. But if you're not doing a fantastic job with the things you must do and need to do in order to move your brand forward, then you're really not going to get the credit in the mind of the consumer for innovation. So, from our perspective, the team at Pearle Vision has been remarkably good and disciplined in being consistently consistent and identifying the things we must and need do in order to move the brand forward and continue to grow the way we are.
Brilliant. So in the last 30 seconds, could you share some of your guys' musts that you do very consistently?
Listen in order to lead. Recognize that consumers make emotional decisions before rational choices, and maintain a degree of humanity in everything that we do.
Got it. Well, there you have it, folks. It's counterintuitive, and like the arrogance and humility. And I've never heard anybody describe marketers as like having inherent arrogance, but I think that that's really interesting concept. And it's also, it reminds me of basically like doing the most important things well and doing them consistently, which is something that we encounter a lot in our world, because we have a lot of clients and they have a zillion initiatives going on, and it's so easy to just get like caught up with all the wants that at the expense sometimes of the needs. So we really focus a lot. We call it like block and tackle RGAs, or revenue generating activities, just the day in, day out things that when you do them and you do them well, like you're going to go up and to the right. So that's really awesome. And I also love the active listening, which I'm working on myself, just personally and as a podcaster. But, also like in sales, like we're launching a new offer right now, which is a coaching offer, like less of a done for you and more of a coaching offer. And we're just like inventing it. We're finding the product market fit, and it can be easy to go into that like selling mode too quickly and actually miss what the person on the other side is trying to say. So that is awesome. I appreciate your time, Doug. You are a badass, certifiably. Um, let everybody know where they can learn more about you, or if they're interested in Luxottica or some of the work you're doing at Pearle.
So you can always visit pearlevision.com to connect with the brand. I'm on LinkedIn, and I think one of the nice things about being a franchise brand is we have to be out in the marketplace. So a nice rich Google search will give you a lot of juicy bits to learn about what we're doing and how we're doing it.
Nice, cool. Well, if you like this show, guys, drop us a like or a comment, share it with a friend. We really appreciate it. And stay on the line, because Doug and I are going to continue our conversation in the bonus footage, which should be somewhere around this video. I want to get a little bit into the weeds. So you mentioned some of the needs, like some of the needs that you've identified.
Sure.
One of them was consistently being human, or like recognizing the human. So when I think of like needs and discipline, the way that I was describing it in terms of what we describe block and tackle or revenue generating activities, they're usually observable things. It's usually like post a great piece of content, or build links, or come up with a new ad. Usually observable things. But how does your average team member go about on a day-to-day basis, like making sure that they're being human? Because that seems almost like an abstract concept.
Well, it really starts with ensuring that every member of the team, regardless of what their title is, has the opportunity to make a difference. And I've structured the organization in a relatively flat manner. So there's really only one layer between the most junior person and me, which allows the folks within the brand team to feel that they have an opportunity to surface up insights or opportunities pretty easily. Mm-hmm. And I think that's really important, because at the end of the day, the key thing you hire for is passion. You can teach somebody a job. You can't teach somebody to be passionate. They either are or they aren't. The other thing is recognizing that eye care and eyewear is deeply rooted in a medical device, medical setting. It's wonderful to get a sexy pair of Ray-Bans or a new pair of Versace sunglasses, but finding that perfect pair starts with ensuring your eyes are healthy. And so if you don't remember that we are a medical service, a healthcare service at our core, then you become very transactional. And that's really not what we're all about. We deliver an amazing patient experience, and we're not the cheapest. We have no desire to be, because we deliver a strong value, brand value, and brand value equals experience divided by price. So as long as your numerator far outweighs your denominator, you don't have to go to heavy level of discounting in order to create value in the mind of the consumer.
I like that equation. Brand value equals experience divided by price.
Yep.
Experience divided by price. Interesting. Yeah, I've never heard that concept, but I like that. Now let's talk about active listening a little bit. And in our world, we work with a lot of data. We have large data sets. And it is very easy to just look at numbers and forget about the people behind it. So like a common occurrence in our world is like, hey, this ad worked better than that ad, right? Like it got more conversions. So like, therefore, let's kill the one that isn't doing as well and go with the one that is working. But there's no human element in what I just said. That's just all data. So like, how can you add humanity to that? And when you do, does the decision potentially change to kill the ad versus not kill it?
So the first thing is really about the notion of how you use data. Data does not make decisions. Marketers, experts make decisions using data. And the reason is because data is only as good as the questions that you ask. The questions that you ask come from a knowledge about the business and ecosystem in which you're looking to understand. So the human element exists from the get-go, which is if you have an incredibly smart research platform and you're asking the right questions, you're going to get data that is meaningful. that's going to help the modern day marketer make the right decision. The right decision doesn't always mean what the data tells. I mean, the famous story about data telling you to do one thing and doing the other is the story of the pilot of NBC, the pilot of Seinfeld and NBC. You know, to this day, Seinfeld was one of the lowest scoring pilots in the history of NBC. Imagine if NBC had decided not to put on Seinfeld because it tested so poorly. You know, there would be no Festivus.
Right.
So you have to recognize that the consumer is not data. The consumer lives and breathes. You know, when you're doing a CRM platform, certainly you're going to look to optimize the communications that drive incrementality. But for your brand to pay off and drive incrementality, your brand first has to be sticky and mean something. And meaning something doesn't necessarily mean that the communications are all about discount or offer. It could be about information.
Yeah.
How do you know what information to give? Data's not going to tell you. Insight's going to tell you.
Yeah.
How do you get insight? Shut up and listen. Ask good questions and do something we're all not very good at these days, which is shutting up and listening.
Absolutely. Yep. I think most of our grandmothers probably told us, you have 2 ears and one mouth for a reason.
Sure.
Well, that's really, really useful. I definitely dig it. Last question for you, and then we can wrap. I know you're busy.
Yeah. Yep.
But I'm just curious, you know, at your scale, and you're not a small organization, like what are your big challenges that you guys are just scratching your head over right now?
So I think how to really use data for good and not for evil. You know, just because you can measure something doesn't mean that you should, and just because you should doesn't necessarily mean it's meaningful. So, you know, continuing to get better about what data we're looking for and really understanding what that data means. I think we are in a highly commoditized category, at least the retail side is, and yet we don't want to be a commoditized brand that's focusing on promotion and discounting. So how do we continue to elevate the level of quality of care perception in order to drive meaningful traffic that translates into profitable consumer transactions? And then the last thing is determining really what insights can lead to what innovation. You know, innovation starts with the first two letters IN, which in my mind stand for insight. So again, there's a lot of things you could do. There's a lot of things you want to do, but what do you really need and must do? And what should you do? Really isolating those things in the world of what is possible in order to really lay the course of a smart, strong, and strategic innovations platform.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Doug Zarkin, thank you, Doug, for being with us today.
No worries, my friend. Best of luck with
everything. Come back again anytime. All right,
you
we'll
got
talk
it.
soon.
Have a good one.